welcome to the Black Women Will Save Black Women podcast, the podcast where we support, amplify, validate, and elevate Black women always. I'm your host, Kamika Dillard, and this is our sanctuary, a space built on the belief that when Black women show up for each other, we don't just survive, we save. This is more than a podcast, it's a movement. So let's get into it. So for this week's Fail Forward Files, let's talk about how I let my anxiety paralyze me. I've shared before, maybe I haven't shared yet, but I suffer from anxiety. I take medications for anxiety. I've been on it for a few years now. So I talk openly about, how anxious I often am. And it's very easy to stay anxious in a world like this. But because I am medicated and I do all these other things to maintain my anxiety, I normally don't have anxiety attacks. I haven't had one maybe in about, it's been a minute. I don't even think I had an anxiety attack when I was laid off, which is surprising. But as you guys know, we just started doing this podcast. I'm a few episodes in and I'm still very unsure of what I'm doing here. If I'm, being completely honest, I don't know if I should be like focusing on doing this, focusing on building my coaching practice. I'm doing this podcast because I'm trying to help the community. Should I be devoting all my time, effort towards this? Or should I be like really just trying to battle it out and looking for a corporate job? So, just pure honesty, I've just been in my head all week, and it's led to some unproductive days if I'm being completely honest. So why am I sharing this this week? Because it is okay to feel the feelings, but you can't let it paralyze you. And I let it paralyze me for a couple of days, like if I'm being completely honest. So normally I give myself, maybe 4 or 5 hours to feel it and go to sleep. That is my default. But then the next morning I wake up and I get super productive. So what is really kind of grounding me during these times and moments where I feel like I don't know what the hell I'm doing is remember that there are a bunch of frauds running this country at the moment. So you are more than qualified at this time to try whatever you want to try because there are a bunch of frauds running the country at the moment. I'm Kamika Dillard, certified ACC professional coach and CEO of S.A.V.E. Forward Coaching. At S.A.V.E. Forward Coaching, professional growth isn't one size fits all. That's why we've created 3 ways to support you. DOT for building clarity and direction, RISE for resilience and intentional action, and VISION for long-term strategy and leadership. Each program is designed to help you move through setbacks with confidence and clarity and create momentum that lasts. No pressure, no hustle, just real progress. Ready to explore what's possible? Book a free discovery call at failforwardcoaching.com. Now, with all that out the way, I'm excited about our first guest. This week's guest is Lauren Pan, LP. She is the intentional leader, founder of Houstory, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, and a champion of authenticity. With over a decade in strategic HR and team building, she's committed to dismantling insecurity in organizations and creating transparency in housing. Through Houstory, she proves that leading with your whole self isn't just ethical, it's a strategy for equity and impact. Welcome this week's guest, Lauren Pan, aka LP. Hey LP, how's it going?
Good.
Good. I'm excited to have you. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. It is really cold in Washington, D.C. Now. It went from 80 degrees to almost freezing, almost overnight.
You gotta love fall right now. It's like, what do you want to be? Do you want to be summer? Do you want to be winter? Can you just pick one, please? So I understand your pain. I'm in LA and it's supposed to be raining very soon, which means, the whole entire city of LA will be paralyzed. So, LP, we want to hear about your story, which we know is you are part of the 300 or up to 500,000 Black women that have been laid off this year. So tell us about it. What happened?
Yeah. Um, so it was not surprising when it was coming. I knew that the company I was working with, it's primarily a government contractor. We saw the writing on the wall, but before all the other government contractors, they had some internal problems, and that resulted in 2 rounds of layoffs, 2 new CEOs. It was just a hot mess. And when I was laid off almost a year ago, it was about 2 weeks before my wedding. And so it was just, I don't know if that was the perfect timing or the worst timing, but it was absolutely insane.
So we get laid off, and then you don't even have time to mourn. There's no mourning period because we are getting ready to get married.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting too because I've been talking to a lot of my HR colleagues, and we always see it coming. We know the signs. The signs are there. So for weeks, or actually months, I knew that that was a real possibility. I used to have people stopping me in a hallway saying, "You know that there's going to be layoffs, right?" And I'm saying, "I'm human resources. I'm full aware of the situation that we're in." And then when it happened, I I wasn't upset because I was so excited about my wedding that I'd been neglecting several details, important details like flowers and hair and stuff that most brides have figured out months before. That I just channeled all my energy into planning my wedding because I was so excited for it, and I didn't even notice the impact until after the holidays of the layoff.
So, how were you even able to switch from, all right, I got laid off and now I have to plan this wedding? Because I tell everyone when I was first laid off, I rolled around on the floor for the first 60 days. And you were like, all right, this happened, but I got to get married in 2 weeks. How were we able to quickly switch focus, LP?
So, I think in our first conversation, I shared with you that that same year, about a month before I was laid off, I was also diagnosed with ADHD, and I started realizing all the techniques that I was doing to mask, and I just stopped. I just stopped masking, and so when the layoff happened, I was like, great, now I can take all this like pent up energy that I've been putting away or ignoring or masking and just funnel into something that was beautiful. One of the things that I learned in 2024 was how important my family was, um, and how important those foundations were. A lot of companies say, and these are usually red flags if you ever hear this, we're like a family here. We care about each other. We want you to grow with us. And then you see how they actually treat people, especially if you're behind the scenes, like in human resources. And so for me, there was a stark difference between my experience in the workplace and my experience with my family. And my background, I come from a mixed religious background that's very conservative. And there was a time that I used to push up against my family not accepting me because I was queer and attracted to women. And there was a lot of pushback against that. But it wasn't until 2024 that I started seeing family members that I thought were completely anti gay completely step up and help me in ways that I am so utterly grateful for. And so when the layoff happened, I was like, well, I'm just going to put my energy into where I see the greatest return, which is the people around me that love me and, my now wife.
I love that. So it's almost as if the switch happened at the perfect time where the quote unquote perceived job family fell away and your other family just stepped up. So I love that for you. So, of course, we get married, we go on our honeymoon. When did you finally start, I guess, dealing with the reality that you no longer had employment?
Well, actually, we didn't go on a honeymoon.
Oh,
Yeah, so we had a sort of a destination wedding. We did it in Philly, right outside of the Philly city limits, to be equally distant between DC and New York, where we're from. I think it was like after the after the holidays come January, where everything starts coming down, you start looking at your credit card bill and everything. You're like, something's got to give. When I decided that, I was like, well, do I want to go back into what I was doing before and understanding like how it impacted my mental health and my relationships, or do I want to take all this positivity that I had from the wedding, from all of the family and friends that gathered together, and channel it into something positive? And so for me, I just decided I can't, like, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing expecting different results. And I didn't want to do the same thing expecting a different result. I was like, I got married, I changed my name, I completely took this like huge milestone that I never thought that I was going to be able to make. And so for me, I was like, I need to bring all that intentionality into the new year and think about what are some things that I can do that's going to stay true to myself, who I am as an individual, but also stay true to my values and stay true to my family.
I love that. So you did not start, I take it that you did not start immediately looking for another corporate job.
No, in fact, I've had a number of people reach out. I mean, I reached out to some of my recruiter friends to let them know the situation. And they would always ask me, they're like, so you're looking for a place right now to go to? And I said to them, I don't know. I don't know if that's not necessarily something I want to do. I did go in a couple of interviews, and they weren't great fits. I was able to pick out some of the immediate red flags just in the first couple of conversations. And I was just like, I can't go down that rabbit hole again. But yeah, it did take me, I would say, a couple of months. I didn't immediately start searching, but it took me a couple of months to solidify the direction I wanted to go in for, you know, 2025.
So you mentioned red flags. Let's talk about what are some of the red flags that like immediately say, okay, this is not the job for me.
Well, I've always been a really big picture thinker, and understanding the corporate strategy, understanding the overall business strategy and the business direction is really important to me, especially in human resources. So a really big red flag is if HR doesn't report to the CEO. If they report to anybody else, that to me shows that it's really not a priority, and I see it more as a sort of tactical function, the paperwork processor type. And we've moved out of the 80s, despite what's going on now, but like we've moved out of that time frame, so we need to move into the direction of the future and think about how we can leverage the most important element of the business and the most silent of the business to be able to make sure everything links together. So for me, that was something that was really important.
People hear HR and say, you're the ops. Tell us why. Why organizations that report up to the CEO actually have a tendency not to operate as the ops, or do they operate more as the ops when they report up to the CEO?
It depends. So whoever has the ear of the CEO tends to have a lot more power and influence. And so if someone in an HR capacity is reporting directly to the CEO, that means that they're seeing what's working and what's not working with the people side and the organizational side, and they can directly impact how programs are going to go. And that can be just as simple as not changing a dental program or not changing a medical or a benefit, like a core benefit, because they want to save a couple of $1,000s. Well, HR will know, like, these 10 employees have had the issues with this in the past, and they've let me know every Friday. They come into my office to let me know what's going on, being able to relay that. And that's just something simple. To the way that I've always saw HR was not necessarily for the people, but really identifying any sort of liability and being able to smooth that over, whether it could be a talent mismatch, which happens sometimes, or it could be some other strategic failing that the higher ups aren't seeing because they're not talking to the people because they're busy on strategy and not worried about the people element.
So essentially, HR needs to be a part of the bigger strategy. So whenever that was not happening in the interviews, that was a big red flag to you.
Yeah. Another red flag is how they talked about their people.
Mm.
There were a couple of folks that I've spoken to, their HR director or HR manager left, and it's in the words that they say and in the words that they don't say, and like the nonverbal cues that tells me there's a lot behind what you just said. And I feel like I can sense what it would be like to work with you. And maybe it's trauma. I don't know. Maybe it's just being working with people, but there's certain telltale signs, particularly when they're talking about replacing an individual and how they sort of try to paint everything as perfect. And that's usually a major red flag.
So you seem to have a strategy going into these interviews of how you want to be way more selective with what type of opportunity you're going to take. What type of financial position are you in to be able to like filter out? So when you were let go, did you get a severance? Were you like 6 months saved up? I mean, you just had a wedding, so I can only imagine the cost. I hear wedding and then I hear 6 months savings, and I'm like, oh, sis, they don't go together. So yeah, tell the people where you were with your finances, sis.
So I'm
Are
gonna
you wealthy? Let us know. Let us know. We want to
um
know.
I would no, I wouldn't say we're wealthy. But what I would say though, and I shared this with you. I started my career in nonprofit, which you had to learn how to stretch a dollar. So that's how I grew up. That's how I grew up in the world of business, stretching a dollar. Prior to being laid off, I was paying for a master's at the same time of working at this startup. And then after that master's ended in 2023, we started paying for the wedding. So we were already living below our means, my wife and I. And so that was something that was very helpful. It's like, well, we don't really have to scale down because we've already been scaling down, and we didn't owe any debt to the wedding. We didn't put anything on our credit cards. We just allocated all of our funds um, to the wedding, and it was just something that we've lived under for the past 5 years. So for us, it was because we already had that reduced lifestyle already. We just sort of carried that through. My wife is a federal worker, so she, I want to say, had stability with her job. She's still luckily at her work, but it was something that was it didn't worry me because she had a stable job. She has tenure, and we were comfortable, as comfortable you can be in that situation.
How comfortable are you being newly married, leaning on your newly married or your new wife from a financial perspective?
It was very uncomfortable. I am a very independent person. I joke with my wife all the time that, when we first got together, I told her that I was going to be the breadwinner and that she better watch out because in a couple of years, I'm going to be out earning her.
Uh,
And and she jokes about retiring early and letting me do my own thing. Now she is a couple of years older than I am, so she has more tenure in the working world. But yeah, it was definitely a change. I did have savings, so I was able to lean on some of those things, but um, we were together for about 5 years before we got married. So we already were accustomed and leaning on each other in different ways, and supporting each other and holding each other up. She was helping and supporting us when I was doing my master's. And so I didn't really see much different than that.
okay. And are we like what has or let me back it up. Has has she made any type of change to, her support from the perspective of is she leaning in more? Like what is that dynamic been like since you guys, this has been an extended period of unemployment?
Yeah, so the biggest thing for us is we just stopped eating out and doing takeout. I think that was the biggest thing. And it was because when I worked, I was traveling all the way to Baltimore every single day. And so that's about 30 miles each way. I did not drive before this. I'm a New York City girl and I had my license, but we didn't drive. And that was like the first time I was like driving every day. So by the time I got home, I was exhausted, going to school and working at a startup, dealing with the ever changing environment there. So I used to go home and used to pass out on the couch. It was definitely not sustainable. Um, but when that ended, I was able to focus on other things that I loved. So I love to cook. So instead of taking out, I would just make different foods. And she also comes from, she's Chinese American. So it took me, it gave me some opportunities to learn more about her culture and how to incorporate that into cooking. And that's what I've been focused on in terms of the household. So it just shifted from eating takeout or eating frozen food from Trader Joe's to cooking and learning how to incorporate her cultural heritage and my cultural heritage in our meals.
I love that. I really do. You mentioned earlier that you were late diagnosed with ADHD. How has that diagnosis like impacted this layoff? Because we know this is not the first time you've lost a job. How have you managed through the diagnoses while also dealing with, this major change in lifestyle?
Yeah, it actually, I don't use this term very often because I'm not religious, but it was a blessing to have somebody confirm, no, you have ADHD, and how you've been navigating your life. Like some of the, I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and they're like, you have all these accommodations already in place for your ADHD. Did you not realize that you were doing this? Like when I was taking my master's, how I approached it was very systematic about how I was going to get things done. And that was the reason why I graduated with an A for my master's, which is, I thought was astounding, like astonishing to be able to do that and work at a startup. But for me, it also highlighted what is not great for my mental health, which also fuels when I was having those conversations with people, I was tapping into that energy and saying, I don't know if my ADHD and this person's management style or this person's company's ethos is really going to align with that. And to give you an example, like I thrive on having, like a core function, obviously, but being able to do about 20% of my work, being able to be a little bit divergent in how I do that. Right. So at the startup, for example, I was learning how to build websites. I was learning how to build a computer. I was learning how to build training programs with a tiny ask and learn how to build like a large scale training program. It was something that was definitely getting me to use my brain and to think creatively about it. And that's something that you don't typically hear with human resources, unfortunately. And being proactive instead of reactive. And that was something I was really thriving. And I learned that these are all reasons or all benefits of ADHD. Like I thrive in environments like that because I take my creativity, think outside the box, and I'm able to solve solutions or come up with solutions. And when I'm interviewing, I'm noticing that a lot of people don't want that. They want someone to maintain a status quo. And I said, you know what? That's going to be terrible for my mental health as well.
Mm.
So I'm not going to lean into that. And ADHD isn't a bad thing. It's actually an evolutionary trait that was designed to have a portion of the population think differently so that way we could survive. Because if everyone's the same, things fall down, which we see now happening in the federal and the US government. If you have sameness, you don't see the cracks, you have confirmation bias, you're not able to look beyond what you already know because everyone thinks the same.
Wait, LP, are you saying that diversity is a strength? Girl, they don't believe that over here no more.
I think I was reading something the other day and I read that when you hear those folks say the phrase DEI, it's really code
Oh, it's
for
for
the
black.
N word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the new N word. Yeah. And I'd rather you
And
just call me the N word with the hard R. Just say it.
just say it. It's just absolutely. I mean, I think the biggest thing that I learned in my journey, just not even necessarily in the workplace, just moving from New York City to Maryland was, I think this is the first time in my life that I've been consistently had people remind me that I was Black and put me in a box. And that was something that was so jarring because I have never had that type of experience be consistently applied to me in that way. Um, and it was something with race. And that was something that was really interesting. And it also shows up in the workplace. Like they have all these assumptions about who I am because of the color of my skin. And when I tell them that I grew up in a mixed religious household with so many different cultures affecting how I grew up, that they're shocked. They're like, how can you be Black and Caribbean and grow up so close to Puerto Rican culture and Indian culture and have all of that be part of your upbringing, be Catholic and Muslim and eat kosher? Like, how is that even a possibility? Um, and it's just, I don't know, that's a very New York thing. And coming out to Maryland, where that type of diversity is not readily seen because everyone's still really segregated, especially outside of like city centers. Um, and that was something that was very jarring to deal with for sure.
Now you realize you saying this on a podcast that is geared towards Black women. They're going to hear you say, "I was not expecting that," and give you a little bit of a side eye, sis,
And
because
that's okay.
what you mean? Like you weren't expecting,
That's
people
okay.
to put you in a box because of race. Like we understand. Like, you grew up in Queens, right?
Yes.
And the Queens just was exempt from like the racism card just because it was super diverse, or help me
No.
understand.
So racism exists everywhere. It's just um the what I've seen in New York, it's the subtleness of it isn't as profound. It's way more profound here, where I'll have people that are actually racist try to be my friend and then try to tear me down. And it was like really weird ways. And one of the things about Black women, like even in my family, we don't like being put in a box. We never did, right? That's one of the reasons why we're the most highly educated group in the United States, the most ambitious group, because we've shown time and time again that we don't deserve to be on the box, okay? We're the ones designing the boxes. We're the ones moving forward the agenda, moving forward social justice, being the creators and innovators that we are. And I would say the Black women listening to this podcast would agree. Like, we don't want to be seen as a Black woman. We want to be seen as who we are, and being a Black woman is just a part of that experience.
That's interesting. When I think about how I self-identify, is Black woman first, everything else extra after. So, which that's just like everyone has their own perception of self-identification. So, I think it's a conversation worth having. We don't have to go super deep into it, but just be prepared. We already got trolls on the podcast, girl. They in the comments. We gonna give them some more fodder to talk about. So, but let's keep it going. So, tell me about what you're working on right now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm working on something that has been sitting on my soul since 2012. And this is when I was working in Brooklyn, and I was working with what they called at-risk youth. It's an elementary school in Clinton Hill, and I was moving from Queens to Brooklyn, and I was being faced with all of these um, barriers to trying to rent. And I didn't understand. Like, I'd have conversations with folks on the phone, and they loved me. And the second I walked in, then they're like, "Oh, your credit must be bad." Really? Because you didn't run my credit. Like, where'd you get that information from? You know? And it kept happening again and again. And I was thinking about my student population. It's like, if I'm experiencing this, I know for a fact that these children and their families are experiencing, if the same or worse than I'm experiencing. Um, and this thing was, it was really really nefarious how it impacted all of us, because it impacts, as you probably know, student attendance, and impacts the neighborhood, the community. If you can't have a stable house and a stable home, and you're bouncing around from place to place to place, like, how are you able to build a community and like lay down roots, right? Or if your neighborhood is, historically underfunded, under resourced, and now you're being pushed out en masse because you don't have that foundation. um, it's something that negatively impacts everyone, and particularly more communities that are, I would say, more marginalized than others. So I formed Houstory just as an idea in 2012, wrote my first business plan in 2013, and said, I don't know if I'm ready to launch this yet, because I don't know how to move forward with this. And it wasn't until 2023 that I had the thought about making it a mobile app and a web page. because for me, that's something that's way more accessible to everybody. As far as I know, as far as we have today, we have libraries, and that has computers, right, and tablets that people can use, right. A lot of people have smartphones, and this is something that's accessible. And I decided with the mobile app idea in 2023 that after the wedding, I wanted to turn my focus 100% on this, because it's been sitting on my soul, and it's been sitting there for over a decade. And I said, we have to do something about it. And every conversation I had just confirmed that this was the right direction. I was, talking to my former colleagues, talking to some of my mentors, and they're like, why aren't you doing this? Because you can. And that was something that people saw in me. They're like, we know that you're going to do something great in your life. So why don't you just do it? And so that's what I've been moving towards. Houstory is being built as a platform for rental transparency. So just getting the public available information, consolidating it, and making it understandable and readable for folks. Getting community feedback, getting feedback and reviews on landlord history, tenant history, unit histories, and then also providing a space that people can learn about the history of different neighborhoods. There was one neighborhood that I was particularly really proud of living in, which was Weeksville in Crown Heights. It's embedded within the Crown Heights community. It's one of the first free Black communities in New York City, and they still have the original houses from the 1800s as part of like a heritage site. And I remember feeling so proud that my landlord, who was also from the Caribbean, grew up in the neighborhood, and I just felt really at home in that neighborhood. And I was like, I want people to experience this and not go through the same headaches that I did growing, throughout. And so that's where Houstory began, and that's where we are now.
I am so excited about this app. So I love the fact that you're going to learn the history of where you're living. I am a history buff. So, and I also want to know if my house is haunted. So I want to know all the history. I want to know who's lived in here before. I want to know if these are good people. My neighbors are good. These are to me things that people like think about after they've already moved in. And I love that this is like a proactive way to get that information. So, where are you at with the app itself?
Yeah, so we're still designing the MVP. So, my background's in human resources and people and operations. Is not in building tech. So I was learning how to code and build my own app, learning how to code and build my own website, learning how to market what I was doing, and I'm literally doing everything. I finally got help about 2 weeks ago. And what took me about 4 months, my wife and I, 4 months to try and design some of the background of the app. I was working with one of my friends that I made, one of my engineer friends, who was able to design what we were trying to do in 4 months in 2 hours. And it's gone so fast. And I'm also partnering with other folks too to kind of help me on the front end side and look at the design and understand the why behind it. So I'm learning a lot, but it's still being designed, and we hope to have a release date by January 2026.
I love it. So, for those of us who aren't in tech, MVP does not stand for most valuable player. It's minimal viable product. So, I just want to make sure everyone in our audience knows that. So, LP, what is your ask for the audience? How would you like us to save you?
Yeah, so I am really big on community. However you identify, however you show up, I'm really big on that. In fact, I want to say that the engineer that's helping me was someone I met through a Black lesbian event in DC during Pride. And it was something that as soon as I met her, she's like, I want to help you with this. And it was just great to have that sense of community. So I just want to tap into the community and to continue to help move this forward. I'm looking for people to tell me their rental stories. You don't have to be in New York City or in Baltimore. You can be in any US city. I want to hear about the impact that renting has had on you, and what you want to see different for your rental experience, and what you want out of a product. Because we are a social impact company. Um, what we're doing is going to impact people in a positive way, but the only way to do that is to hear the stories. I like to tap into this because my ancestors told stories. My I say my aunties in my family have traced our lineage all the way back to slavery in the U.S. and parts of the Caribbean, and that was something that was really impactful in understanding our journey, um, and also helped dispel a lot of different rumors and misinformation I had even about my own history. And I want to do the same thing with Houstory: is collect these stories, hold people accountable, and understand that we can create something under this capitalist system that still can help people. And that's what I want to do.
I am so excited about what the possibilities of this could be. I just think about how I grew up off of Crenshaw and Slauson and how the perception is, oh, that was the hood and Boys in the Hood. When, like, yeah, that was the hood, but these are also neighbors that looked out for us. These were people who had, like, I just could tell so many stories about living and growing up and feeling safe and feeling protected and dispelling some of these perceived our preconceived notions of what living in this neighborhood is. And I can just see how this app could really just help, you know, neighborhoods that might be viewed as, undesirable. When in all actuality, what you might see on the news may not be what really is happening there. So I see all the possibilities. I'm excited. Where can the people find you?
Yeah, so people can find me on social media. They can find me on our website, houseryapp.com, on Instagram and TikTok, where TikTok, TikTok, it's Housery app. And I have a Facebook and LinkedIn page. And, we're posting as often as possible. I'm starting a new series called Houstories, which is talking about people's rental experiences living in New York City. And I am focusing on folks that have, similar story that I do, where it's like, it's not only the struggle of trying to find housing, but it's all these other factors involved, like walking into a realtor's office and being denied just because they look at me and see what I look like and determine that that's not good enough. So people are sharing their stories with me already, and you'll start to see that on social media.
I love it. And that's Houstory. There's no E in it. .com and on all the socials as well. So thanks, LP.
Thank you.
This has been an awesome conversation. I'm excited about what's to come. And for our last segment of the night of the day, it's night when we're taping this, but our save strategy for the week. So this week's save strategy is really centered around the S in save: support, 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 support. Support your friends' efforts, okay? Real talk. Support is not anything super complicated, y'all. It can be as little as referring a friend to your friend's Instagram page, seeing a job that might fit them, giving them feedback that might help their business, or just giving them feedback in general. But we got to support each other. Support is a verb, it is an action driven word. Okay. It is not a noun when we are talking about it. We really want people to support one another. We are up against the holidays. Support is going to be so crucial during this time. So, really just think about, how do you really want to support the Black women in your life during this time, especially those who have been impacted this year? We need to figure out how to actionably support them. There are some women who are choosing to go back into the job force that are actively looking. They need jobs, y'all. There are some women who are choosing to be entrepreneurs. They need you to amplify and get their products out. We need support. So I just want to just keep saying, support does not have to be anything super big. It can be something super small, but please, please, please support folks during this time. Um, and that's all I have to say. With everything that's going on, I think that, support is really going to be how we differentiate what the next steps and what 2026 is going to look like. So, at the end of the day, support, amplify, validate, and elevate. That is how we save Black women. And never forget that Black women will save Black women. Thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Kamika Dillard. Tune in, follow us on all the socials: YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. get all those things. Merch line coming soon. And you see I'm wearing my shirt tonight. So please, just follow us, tune in, tell a friend. All right. See you next week in the sanctuary.